this is Melanie with Above All Fabric, and today I'm going to show you how to make a really simple baby blanket, but it is counterintuitive, and so a lot of people have trouble with it, especially because I didn't put a lot of illustrations in the free tutorial that I did. So I wanted to make a video to show you guys how to do this super simple blanket. And today I'm going to use this cute zoo print from Kate Spain, part of her Central Park collection, and then I'm going to use the Minky fabric, which I just recently got in stock. So the first thing you want to do is you want to cut the inside main print, which is going to be the front of the blanket. That is going to be 30 inches by 30 inches. And then you're going to cut your Minky, which is 60 inches wide. So it's nice because it's a wider fabric. You're going to cut it 40 inches by 40 inches. Obviously this would also work with flannel, with just two cottons, with a satin and a Minky, or pretty much whatever you want to do. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the center point on all four of your corners. So I'm just going to fold the blanket in half here and mark that center point with a pin. And I'm going to do this along all four edges. So I've already done this one, and I'm going to do the same exact thing with the Minky. Now this is where a lot of people get confused. I'm going to match up those center marks where I've pinned it, and that means that the Minky is going to be bigger, 5 inches larger on both sides of the cotton fabric, and that is correct. That is what you want to do. So I'm going to pin this in place. Now when you're sewing with Minky, you want to use a wider seam allowance, so I recommend a 1/2 inch seam allowance instead of a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And because of that, because I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, I want to start and stop 1/2 inch from the raw edge of the print fabric. So I'm going to use my seam gauge. I'm going to mark it, take it down to 1/2 inch. I'm going to go, I don't know how the video is, but I'm going to go from the edge of my print fabric, the main front fabric. I'm going to go from the edge in 1/2 inch, and I'm going to mark that with a pin. And that is where I will stop. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to go from the edge in 1/2 inch, and I'm going to mark it with a pin, and that is where I will start. And the reason you want to make sure to do a 1/2 inch from both ends is so that you get a really nice crisp mitered corner once we're finished. Now if you were using flannel or just two cottons, or something where you were using a 1/4 inch seam allowance instead of a 1/2 inch seam allowance, then you would want to start and stop a 1/4 inch from each end. So whatever your seam allowance is, if you use 5/8, whatever you are used to using, then you want to make sure to start and stop that amount from each end. So I'm going to go sew this, and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, I sewed that first side together, and I realized that I didn't start out showing you what we were making. What we're doing is making a blanket that self-binds its the back part wraps around to the front, and it's one continuous piece, so you have a self-binding blanket. And you can do that without cutting and attaching a binding. So anyway, now that I have this side sewn together, I'm going to do the exact same thing on the next side. I'm going to match up those center points where I have marked the centers with a pin, and I'm going to pin the raw edges together. And this is going to, let's see here, that is going to leave all this extra minky fabric that, if you're thinking about it logically, it's like, wait a second, what am I supposed to do with this? Trust me, it's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. So that's where a lot of people get confused, because they want to bring this edge up and then they have like this big bulk, and you don't. You want to match up the center points. That's the key. So we'll match up our center points. I'll pin this in place and sew it together. And you're going to repeat this for all 4 sides. Now the only difference is on the 4th side, you need to leave an opening in order to turn it right side out. Okay, I have all 4 corners, all 4 sides sewn together, and on the 4th side I left an opening for turning. And now what we're going to do is miter the corners. So what you want to do is take where your corners meet up and fold your blanket to where it forms a triangle on that corner, and it should lay nice and smooth at that spot. And you're going to take your ruler, and I'm going to just use my cutting mat here, line it up along one of the straight lines, and then from that starting and stopping point, I'm going to draw a line that is 45 degrees up and out. So I'm going to start at that point and line up my ruler 45 degrees, which I'm just using the cutting mat to help guide that. So I have my stopping and starting line right there, and then I went 45 degrees up. So I'm going to go sew that in place. Okay, so I sewed that in place, and you can see, well, I'm hoping you can see right where my finger is where I stopped and started when I was sewing the raw edges together, as well as where I stopped and started for that 45-degree angle. And now what you want to do, hoping that you can see this here, is test it out to make sure that that corner is going to lay the direction that you want it to lay. So even though right now this is with the wrong side facing out, the right sides are still together, you can see now that the extra minky fabric wraps around to the front, and we're going to cut that excess off. So you're going to do that with all 4 of the corners. We've already done 1. Now I'm going to do the other 3, and then we only have 1 simple step left for this blanket to be done. I just thought I would show you a quick shot after I cut the excess off, so that none of that bulk will be underneath the blanket. Okay, so now I've turned my blanket right side out through that hole, and the last thing that is left to do is to close up this opening over here where we turned it. So what I do is I lay the back piece of fabric flat, and then with an iron, iron that in place. It's hard to do while I'm holding a camera in my hand, but so that it lays nice and smooth. And then we're just going to top stitch around that whole outer edge to go ahead and hold it in place, and that's it. Your blanket is done. Okay, so hopefully that helps and that makes a little bit more sense in conjunction with the written directions. And let me know if you have any questions or troubles. I would love to see what you make at aboveallfabric.com. There is a link to the Flickr group, and just post your pictures there. Alright, thanks. Bye.